Today we're going to go back and take a look at ACPT, which is a kind of alternative to tools like Metabox, Advanced Custom Fields, JetEngine, and so on. It allows you to create custom post types, custom metafields, taxonomies, and so on. But it also has a couple of extra features which mean that you don't rely upon third-party tools like you would have to with ACF and ACF Pro. So we're going to use this as the backbone to a tutorial I want to cover today, where we're going to create an events-based website. We're going to keep it relatively simple, but it's going to show you some of the fundamentals. We're also going to pair this up with Bricks Builder, but you could use other alternative tools like Elementor if you prefer. But I'm going to use Bricks, it's what I'm most familiar with. So let's take a look at how we can get everything set up. So once you've installed everything, you're going to have a new section inside your dashboard called ACPT. Inside there, you're going to have a bunch of different options. Now, you may not see everything that I've got here. That's because by default, certain features are disabled. So we can enable those and control everything very easily. All you need to do is come into your settings section, and from there, you can come into your content settings, and you can see we can enable and disable various different features. Just enable everything for now so you can follow along with what I've got here. So we're going to break things down into, start off with custom post types, taxonomies, and field groups. We'll take a look and explore some of the other options a little later. So custom post types, we can create, as its name would suggest, a new custom post type. We can then organize that using taxonomies, and then we can put additional custom fields into our new custom post type using the field groups option. So let's do just that. Let's create a new custom post type. We're going to say register new post type. Now you notice before we do, we've got pages and posts, which are the default kind of post types inside WordPress itself. You can show these and various different options here. We're not going to touch that. We're going to leave it as it is, and I would generally recommend you do the same. Let's say we want to register a new post type, and this then takes us into the three-step wizard that allows us to create it. Now, if you're coming over from anything like ACF, JetEngine, Metabox, and so on, this is all going to feel very familiar. Most of the terminology is going to be the same. The way you set things up may be a little bit different, but all the functions are pretty much the same. So the first thing you're going to do is give this a name. Now, the thing that kind of confused me a bit here is it calls a post name. This is actually the slug you want to use. So you can see this is kind of used, tells you underneath what it is. So we're going to call this event. Singular label, event, and plural, events. You can choose an icon or upload one. Let's simply choose one. For ease, let's just grab this calendar one. That'll do for now. And then we can choose what native WordPress functions are supported. So by default, you've got your title, editor, thumbnail, and excerpt. And for this example, that's perfectly fine. We'll leave that as it is. We can then jump on to step 2. So let's do that. This is where we can set the labels. Now, as with pretty much all of these tools, in general, you're not going to change any of this information. But if you want to, it's here, should you need to. I'm going to leave everything as it is here, because it's all perfectly fine. Let's go to our next step. And this is where we do probably want to take a look at configuring a few things. I would always recommend you use hierarchical, even if you're not using any kind of hierarchy in your content. It's just a nicer interface to work with inside WordPress. So let's enable that. Yes, it's public. Yes, we want to be queryable. Yes, we want to show it in the user interface and in the menu, and in the nav menus, and in the admin bar. REST API, that's perfectly fine. Menu position, let's just pop this right at the top. So we'll say before posts. Capability type, post is perfectly fine. So it's going to pick up the native functions as part of posts. That's cool. Has an archive. Good to see that's enabled by default. That allows us to create the archive template using whatever tools you want to use. Native Gutenberg, Bricks, Elementor, doesn't matter what. Leave a rewrite, everything's fine on there. With front, yep, leave that. Query variable, that's fine. Everything else is fine. If you want to customize the URL prefix, you can do. This is what will kind of come after your mydomain.com/. What you put inside there, by default, it's going to pick up the slug that we created at the beginning, event in this example, and then the name of the event afterwards. We'll leave that as it is, but if you want to change it, you can do. We'll hit save. We've now created our first custom post type. You see it's listed here, and also we now have events listed at the top. And inside there, we've got all events and add new event. Now, if we want to, we may change this to this. You can see this is a custom post type. We can associate taxonomies. We haven't created any yet, but we can do that in a moment. You can create field groups, you can show field groups, and you can view, edit, duplicate, and so on. You can even export the code if you want to. So we'll leave those as they are. All those things are fine for this example. Now let's just jump over into taxonomies. Let's create some taxonomies to group our different events together. So let's do taxonomies. We'll create a new taxonomy inside here. So again, this looks very similar to what we just done with the creating the custom post type. Again, you can see the native WordPress functions for category and tags are listed here. But let's go and register a new taxonomy. And again, we get that nice simple 3-step wizard. It's a little simpler this time, but you get the idea how this all works. Slug is actually set here, so I prefer this to be on the same thing as custom post types, so we know it's a slug we're dealing with. So let's just say event types, event type for the singular, and event types for the plural. Again, let's hit next step. Any additional labels, again, we're going to leave those as they are. There shouldn't be anything we really need to change in there. Go to the next step. Again, we're going to tweak this. So we're going to say hierarchical, yes. Everything else on there looks pretty good. We want to show an admin column. Just makes it a little nicer. When you look at the actual listings for your events, you can see what event type they are. Nice. Capabilities, everything's fine there. Rewrite, query roles, everything is fine. We're going to say, yes, we can sort this. And we're going to say save. So now we've created our taxonomy and we've created our custom post type, but we haven't linked them together. So we need to do that next. So what we can do is we can come to our event types and click on associate, and then we can choose what to associate it with. So there's all of our custom post types. Let's associate it with our events. Job done. We are finished. So if we come back to our custom post types, you can see this is custom. Everything else is listed here. If we come into our taxonomies, you can see everything is set up here as well. And finally, we're going to go into our field groups and we're going to create the meta fields that are going to go in addition to the title, featured image, and so on, that are the native functions that we've already associated with our custom post type. So let's create our first meta group. This now brings up the settings section and the meta boxes that we're going to include and connect up to our new custom post type. So we can choose to display things in various different ways. Standard view, we'll stick to that, but you can have an accordion, horizontal tabs and vertical tabs and so on. So you can customize the way this looks inside the dashboard. You then got the ability to choose whether you want this to be advanced, normal at the bottom, in other words, or at the side. So it depends upon the kind of content. Makes sense to put it where you think makes most sense. And then you can set the priorities. So you have multiple different meta groups associated with the same post type. You can organize which is the most important and so on. We'll leave that as it is. You can add a condition in to say where this will be displayed. So by default, you can see we've got select. We now want to make sure this is connected up to our post type we've created. But you see there's a bunch of options inside here. We're going to keep this to post type is equal to, and let's just select our custom post type for events. There we go. So we've now connected whatever meta fields we set up inside here to that custom post type. Let's save this. And now we can move on and start adding our meta boxes. Now, if you're enjoying this video and getting value from it, why not hit that thumbs up button to tell YouTube that you enjoy this kind of content? If you didn't enjoy it though, you can hit the thumbs up button twice, as that works pretty well too. And if you want to be kept up to date, hit the subscribe button while you're down there. Anyway, let's get back on with the tutorial. Now, even though ACPT has a lot of different meta boxes we can use, we're going to keep this relatively simple for this beginner's tutorial. However, if you'd like me to cover more of these in more detail or specific use cases, let me have a comment down below and let me know what you'd like to see. I want to cover ACPT in a little bit more detail over the coming weeks and months to include this alongside my other dynamic data tutorials to give you more options. So let me know what you'd like to see in the comment section down below. And thank you for taking the time to do that. Anyway, let's create our first meta box. So now we've done that, you can see we've got our meta box title. So let's just edit this and change that from meta box title to something that makes a bit more sense. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this event details. And there we go. So we'll close that. And now we've named this particular group of meta boxes. You'll notice over on the right-hand side, we've got a couple of things. We've got duplicate this meta box. You can delete it. You can add a field and you can show or hide this meta box. You can also show the navigation, which I kind of like because as you start to create more meta fields, this list can get quite long and it's nice to be able to easily jump through to those using this simple navigation. And you'll see this flesh out as we add some fields in. So let's add our first field in. This opens up the various different options, and as you can see, now our navigation shows this over on the left-hand side. So first things first, we need to give this a name that makes a little bit more sense. To do that, we set the field label. So this is going to be event date. You can see that pre-fills the slug out, which is fine. Then if you open up, these are the different kinds of meta fields we can create. And as you can see, there are a lot of options in here, including some quite advanced ones, things like repeaters, flexible clone fields, relationship fields, those kinds of things. So again, if you want me to cover specific ones of these, let me know in the comment section down below. For this though, we're going to keep this super simple. We just want this to be a date. So we'll select that from our list. You can pop in a description if you want to. Then you can choose the default value for the field. We'll leave that as it is for now. You can come up to your advanced options, so you can customize various different aspects of this, including the actual date format. So if we expand this, you can see there's a range of different options available inside here. Now, using bricks, you can still format this when you output it, so just know that, but it depends on the tools you're using. So choose the format you think is the most readable for what you're looking to achieve. For this example, let's just say something like this. There we go. I'm not going to worry about any of these field settings with the minimum and maximum values, but depending upon the kind of field you create, it might make sense to set things up inside here, like step values and so on. For example, you may be creating something like a real estate website, and then you want to have people to put the property price in. You don't want it to go up in ones and twos. You want to go in thousands or tens of thousands. So you can set the step values and so on inside here. Pretty useful. Okay, we'll leave that as it is. Conditional logic, we're not going to use any of that, but you do have it available, including the option for validation rules and permissions. We're going to leave those for now. If you want me to cover those in a future video, let me know in the comment section. Then we've got a couple of options at the top. So I want to show this in the admin post list. So we'll say, yes, we do. Do you want to make this filterable? Yes, we do. Do you want to make this quick editable? Yes, we do. And do you want to make this field required? Yes, we do. So there's our first field created. So now we can go and create our second field. So let's add another one in. This time, this is going to be for the address of the actual event itself. So let's just put in event address. Again, you can see the options pre-fill out. We'll leave this as a text field. That's perfectly fine. But you could set this up as a map field if you want to, and then you could connect this up to Google Maps and have a map display as part of your listing. It's up to you. There's lots of options in how you could do this. Again, you put a description in, the default value, any advanced options, conditional logic, and so on. So we're going to leave those as they are. We'll say we want this quick editable, and we need to have this as a required field. Let's add one more field in for this example for our test, and this time we're going to set this to be event gallery, and we'll set this type to be a gallery. There we go. If you want to set any advanced options, conditional logic, and so on, you can do. And again, you can say whether you want to show this, etc. Get the idea. You can see there's our navigation, so we can easily use this to jump around to the various different parts. But we'll leave it as it is for now. That looks pretty good. So all the settings we need to get up and running are here. Let's hit save. And that's our custom post type, taxonomies, and metafields created. Now, if we come over to our events, you can see we've got all events, add new event, and event types. So the event types is the taxonomy we created. So let's go and add a couple of event types in. Jump into that section, and this is just the same as what you've seen with categories and tags as part of WordPress. So nothing new here. It's just a custom version associated with our custom post type for our events. So let's put some event types in. So we have a music festival, a food festival, and add that one. So now we've got 3 different event types. Let's come into all events, and you can see this shows what we would expect, the title and the date and so on, but we've also got the event type and the event date and the featured image. So we've got some additional information here based upon the meta fields and how we set everything up. So let's add a new event, and as you can see, we get the normal features at the top, the actual title, the content itself, our featured image. We've also got our event type, which is our custom taxonomies we've just created. And underneath, you can see we've got our event date, event address, and event gallery. So let's create one. Let's put some info in, and let's come out to our events, set a featured image. Let's upload a couple of images. Let's select this one. We'll say this is the music festival, and now we can pop in our custom data. So we'll choose our date, set the date, event address. Alright, let's add a couple more images and add those in. So we now added a gallery in as well. So we've created our post, added some info in. Let's publish this, jump back out. And now you can see there's our first event. Let's add another one in. I won't worry making you watch me do this. I'll just add it in myself and we'll come back. Let's take a moment to hear from today's video sponsor, SEO Press. Now, creating custom page titles and meta descriptions manually can be time consuming. SEO Press offers a solution that lets you quickly generate meta titles, descriptions, and alt text using OpenAI while keeping your data private. With SEO Press Pro, you can save time, improve your rankings, and optimize your website with maximum efficiency. Enhance your SEO with the help of AI. You can learn more by following the link in the description down below. There we go. We've got a couple of events now added into our event listing. So now we've got those basics all set up. Now let's take a look at how we can start to output this information on the front end of our website. And then we're going to come back a little later and see how we can actually make it available for people on the front end to be able to add their own events into our website. This is pretty cool and all included in ACPT. No additional plugins needed. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over into Bricks, and from here we're going to create two different templates. The first one is going to be the template that shows all of the events. The second one then is going to be the template that shows the details for a specific event itself. Now this is a really simple example, but it shows you how you can get started. You can start adding as much meta information as you want into your whole setup. So let's come in and add a new template. We'll just click on Add New Template at the top. We'll give this a name. We'll set the template type to be Archive. And we'll click Publish, and we'll edit this with Bricks. First thing we need to do is set up the conditions for where and when this is going to be used. So to do that, we're going to come over into our settings section, into our template settings and conditions, add a condition, and from there we're going to set this to be Archive. We're going to set this to be a post type, and finally we're going to set this to be Events. So we're saying it's an archive of a specific post type, and that specific post type is our custom one called Events. Populate content. Let's open this up. We're going to say author posts. Then the post type, we're going to choose events. Hit apply preview. That will reload the page, and that will allow us now when we start to create the template to show data that's specific to the custom post that we've created. Makes building things a little easier. Okay, so we've got our template all set up, ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over into our elements, and from there we're going to add a section in. We're going to just quickly rename this. Container is fine, and inside that we're going to go and add in a block. We're going to rename that block to event card, and that's going to be the container that's going to contain the information, so the featured image, the name of the event, and so on. So what we need to do is drop in a couple of elements. Let's come over, and from here we're going to just go and select the options from our basic. Now you can use these options for post title and so on. I just think there's a little bit more level of control by just adding in the various different elements and connecting that up to the dynamic data. It's just the way I prefer to work in a lot of instances. So we're going to add a heading in, we're going to add an image in, we're going to add some basic text, and we're going to add in another basic text. Okay, so there's all the components to make up our card in place. We've got to do a couple of bits and pieces before we can kind of move on. The first thing is I want to apply some classes to this so we can make sure we can style things and be able to replicate this. Even though this is a single example, it's good practice to do it. We also want to set up a few things on how this actual content is going to be displayed from a semantic point of view, from an accessibility point of view. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is select our card. So we're going to call this event-card. Simple as that. So now we've applied a class. So inside there, we've got 4 different elements, and each one of those probably needs to be styled in a certain way. So what we're going to do is we're going to use BEM naming, or block element modifier naming. Link in the description for a tutorial on what that means and how you use it. So we're going to come down to our heading. And from there, we're going to come over and we're going to do event-card __ heading. For ease, I'm simply going to copy this first part, so I don't have to keep typing that in. So event heading, hit enter. Now choose the next one. This one is going to be our event __ image. Let's quickly rename this to excerpt. And the final one we'll call meta. So like we've done before, let's select, come over, and we're going to call this excerpt. And our final one. So now we've got classes applied to all of those different elements. We're using that BEM naming. So we can select our card, making sure our card is selected in the classes, come over, and we're going to set a row gap. Now I'm using Core Framework to speed up my design process, but you can just use arbitrary values if you're not using a framework. You can use ems, percentages, pixels, whatever you want to use. So we're going to just set this to be 2XS. That's going to give us a little bit of spacing between each one of these. We're then going to come over to our heading, select our class, set this to be H3, that's fine. Come into our styling, and from there we're going to set our size. So come into our typography, we're going to set this to be large. There we go. Obviously you can style this in any way you want to. Our image, we're going to select that from our list, select our class, going to come in and we're going to come into our content. We're going to set this to be 4 by 3. I'm going to set this to cover. Come into our excerpt, delete the content that's inside there and select this. Come into our style, typography, set this to be medium. And we'll come back to our meta in a moment because there's a few things we're going to need to do to that. So we're now ready to start connecting our dynamic data. So let's select our heading first of all, making sure we've got our class selected. Let's remove this placeholder, click on dynamic data, and from here we want to open up the post option and choose our post title. Set this to be H3 if it's not already, and set any other parameters that you want. Going to come into image this time. Going to select dynamic data one more time. Scroll down till we get to the featured image. Choose our excerpt. Same again. Come over to our dynamic data. This time we're going to choose post excerpt. We're going to set the word limit to be 15. That's fine. And finally, our meta. We're going to remove the information inside here. Select our class. And we're going to add in some basic info. So we want to put in the date, for example. So we'll just type in the word date and a colon. Then we're going to click our dynamic data. And this time, instead of post, we're going to come down to ACPT because this is where we've got our custom information. So we've got our event details, the date, the address, and the gallery. So let's choose the date option. Now you're probably noticing that nothing is actually showing up, even though we set the conditions, we told what to populate the content so we could see. The reason is because we haven't set a loop up and tell it what information we want to actually loop through. So let's do that next. Let's come over to our card and select it, making sure we've got our class selected, and we're going to enable the query loop. Once we've done that, we can now open up the query options. And you can see this pre-fills information, and in this example, it's the right info. But let's customize the query anyway. Let's open the query options up. From here, we're going to choose the post type and set this to be events. We'll hit save, and you can see that's pulled in the information, including the date and everything else we've got set up. It still looks a little bit rubbish, so let's address that. Let's come over, first of all, to our container. And from there, we're going to set this up to be not a div. We're going to choose the option for an unordered list. This is because it sets up as an unordered list, and a list item is better from accessibility point of view, from a semantic point of view. So that's what we're going to do. You won't see any difference on the actual design itself, but the underlying code will be much better structured. So first of all, that's that side of things done. You'll notice though that we've now got this extra bit of space on the left-hand side. It's because we set this as an unordered list, it treats each one of these, or it will treat each one as a list item. And by default, list items will have a bullet point or a number or things like that in front of them. So we can address that by simply making sure that we've got our container selected. We're going to come over into our style, to our layout, and from there you can see we've got padding set at 40 by default. Set that to 0 and it's gone. Job done. Now with our container still selected, going to come back to our content, going to set this over to be grid. Going to set a gap inside here, and we're going to set this up to be medium. And then we're going to set the grid columns. Now you could do this in a couple of different ways. You could do something really simple like 1 FR, 1 FR, and we now have 2 columns. Simple as that. However, if you're using a framework like I am, we can simply use this and set the number of columns we want. And you see that sets it up and everything is in place and scalable. Now, speaking of scalable, let's make sure this looks good on the different devices. So if we quickly switch over to tablet portrait, looks fine. Landscape, probably a little bit too much info on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be just a single. And the same thing then, you see this flows down anyway because it uses the cascade of CSS. So now we've got 2 columns on desktop, 2 tablet, single on mobile landscape, single on mobile portrait. Cool. There's the mobile side of things already taken care of. Okay, so now we're going to come to our event card, and from here, we're going to set this from a div to a list item to keep in line with our container being set as an unordered list. Our cards are going to be list items. So you can see how easy it is to start pulling this information in. Let's say with this meta information, we want to add something else in, like maybe the location. So you could just simply pop in some kind of spacer, and we'll just say location. Dynamic data again, ACPT, there's our address, click to add that in, and there's our address included. Let's make this a little smaller, making sure we've got our class selected, come over into our typography and set this to be small. There we go. Looks a little bit ugly, but this is more about showing you how you can set this up more than a design kind of tutorial. Okay, so let's just save this and let's preview it. And as you can see, we now have our grid set up. We don't have any links on here at the moment though, so let's address that next. We're going to apply a link to just the heading here, but we're going to then use a little bit of code to make the entire card clickable and accessible. So with our heading selected, let's come over to our content, set our link type to be dynamic data, and then we're going to open up the dynamic data, open up our post, and say we want to use the post URL. So now we've created a link, and the link is just the title. And you need to have one link here to make this all work. So with that selected, let's now make the card accessible. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our card, come over, and we're going to Style, and come down to Custom CSS. And you're going to use this little bit of custom CSS that I'm going to supply you in the details down below. So what this little block of code is doing is it's taking a look at the card design, the link that's set on the H3 heading, and so only the heading has it, and it is a H3. If you change that, you're going to need to change this little piece of code here from H3 to whatever you set it up as. Then what it's doing is it's taking that link and it's expanding it out to the entire card design. Therefore, we're making the entire card clickable, and also there's a few accessibility benefits to doing it this way. So just use this code, make sure you set it up the way I've got mine set up, and you are good to go. Let's save this, and let's check it out in the front end. So now you can see, we can come over to our title, it's clickable, and as you come down, so is our image, our text, our meta information, all clickable. So the entire card is clickable. Cool. Now speaking about clickable, if we click on this card, this will take us over into what looks terrible because we haven't set up the actual template for a single post. Let's do that now. So back into the template section inside Bricks, we're going to add a new template, give it a name. We're going to also set this to be a single, publish it, and edit with Bricks. So we now have our template ready. So the first thing we need to do is set the conditions up. So we'll come into settings, template settings and conditions, add a condition. From there, we're going to drop this down and we're going to say post type. Choose the post type that we want, events. We're going to populate our content. So again, like we've done before, we're going to choose in this example a single post or page. We're going to come in and select, and we're going to type something in here. We'll choose the Steelhouse Festival and select that. Click Apply Preview. And that now will use that data from that specific post and use that when we create the template. So like we've done before, let's just create a new section. Inside that section, let's go and start adding in some various different elements. Again, I'm not going to focus on design, simply going to show you how you set it all up. Then it's up to you to get creative with your design. So let's start off with the title. So we're going to come over to our elements. Again, we could use these options if we want to. For this example, let's just say we'll pop the post title in, come down and add an image in, add our post content. And we'll set these up and we'll come back and apply in some custom metadata in a moment. So you see this has already pulled in the relevant actual title. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this container and we're going to just do like we've done before. Let's apply a class to this, call this event single. And like we've done before, we use that BEM naming. So event single underscore underscore, call this title, save again, call this featured image, and finally post content. So now we've got this class applied. Let's grab our container, select the class, come down into our rogue app, and like we've done before, let's set some space there. Cool. Come into image, let's connect this up. So we'll select our class, choose our dynamic data, and like we did previously, this is our featured image. Give it a second or so, that should load that in. There we go, cool. Let's set the aspect ratio. We'll do 16:9. I'll set the object fit to cover. And while we're at it, you can get creative here if you want to have a bit of fun. Let's come into our style, for example, come to our borders, into our border itself, connect these corners up, and apply some radius here. Let's say we want a medium radius, round those corners off, nice. Post title, select it, come to our content, H1 is fine here, so that's all working correctly, no problems with that. Post content, again, select our class. Data source is going to be WordPress. Then you set your typography and the various different things if you haven't already set that up as part of your theme style or your CSS framework. So you can see that's now put the basic info in place. Let's save this and test it out in the front end. Let's refresh this page, and already it's looking considerably better. So now we've got the basic info in. Let's add in some of those custom meta fields that we created using ACPT. Let's go back in, come back at the top to our post title, and let's set this to be a little smaller. So come to our styles and typography. Let's set this to be something like 2XL. Set our font weight to something a little lighter. There we go. That looks pretty cool. So now let's add in some custom meta information underneath. So like we've done before, we'll just insert, in this example, a rich text element. So we can apply a little bit of formatting to it and select it. come over to our content and remove the basic placeholder content. Let's give this a class name, call this meta. So what we're going to do is put in the event address, click our dynamic data, come down to ACPT, and choose our address from the list. There we go. That adds that information in. Because we've chosen a rich text, we can apply some styling to this if we want to. Pretty cool. Next up, the event date. Same thing again. Let's add in our ACPT meta information. So there's our event date. Let's format this. Alrighty, let's just jump into our styles and let's set our font size to be a little smaller. Something like this. Now we've added our meta information in. So final piece we want to add inside here now is going to be the image gallery that we created. So like we've done before, let's come out to our components and add a new component in. Let's search for gallery. We'll choose our image gallery from the list. Give this a class and enter or return. Come into our content and now we can go and choose our dynamic data. So we're going to come into our dynamic data information, close this top down, come down to our ACPT, choose our gallery from the list. You see that pulls in the images and now we can format that gallery. So we can choose what kind of layout we want. For example, masonry, grid. It's up to you how you want to set things up. Number of columns we'll set to be 3. Spacing, we'll use the options we've got as part of core framework. Set medium inside there. Image height, you can set up image ratio. So for example, 16:9. If that sits a little bit better, you kind of get the idea. You can configure this how you want. Let's go for 4:3 in this example. Then you can set your link to. If you want to, you can link this to a lightbox, and then you can control the lightbox side of things. So let's just hit save on this and test this out now with our additional information. And as you can see, now we've got a fully featured custom page with our custom content, pulling in our custom data mixed in with our standard data that's part of WordPress. We've got our image gallery, which we can click and take a look at the various different images inside there. All pretty cool, looking and working nicely. Now you notice the image here isn't full width. That's easy to address. We can just simply come inside here, choose our image, come into our style, our layout, and we'll simply set this to have a minimum width of 100%. There we go. That's addressed that. So we now have image set up correctly. So there's the first part of this all done. We've created the archive and we've created the single post template. So our site is all kind of set up and running. But what if we want people to add their own events in? Let's take a look at another feature that we've got part of ACPT, which is a forms function. This is going to be a really simple example. You'd want to put security on top of this as well. I just wanted to show you how this all works. So let's go back into our dashboard. This time from the ACPT menu, we're going to choose the option for forms. And now let's create a form. So we're going to create form. We'll give this a name. We'll call it add event. The action in this example is going to be post management, but there are other options available. Again, if you want a video on how to use the forms, let me know in the comment section down below. Post management is fine. This form has been successfully emitted. Well, let's change that. There we go. You want to put a redirect after submission. You can do that if you wanted to redirect to a thank you page. You get the idea. Again, pretty simple and self-explanatory. Then we've got the option for how we want to populate the information. In this example, we're going to drop this down and there's our post type of events. Select that from our list and then we can see it shows us all the different options we've got available. And it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to create a new post? You can say, yes, we do. And what happens afterwards? Do you want to post it and publish it? Well, let's just say we want to set this to be pending so we can ensure that it's approved before anyone actually posts information. So now if we take a look underneath, you can see this shows us the group name, the event address, the event gallery, and so on. So we'll click on save on this, and that will then create the form for us. And there we go. There's our form created. There's our shortcode we can use to insert into Gutenberg, Bricks, whatever you want. We can edit this, which will take us back to the same section we just seen, or we can manage it, which allows us to choose what fields we want to include and how those fields are going to work. So you can see things are broken down into 3 different sections here. Standard fields, which are things like your capture, your buttons, and so on. Your normal WordPress fields, and then finally your ACPT custom fields. So let's start to build our form out. You can say we want to add the post title in. Obviously, add that at the top. Now, if we select the post title, we can change the content here. So you can see post title is the name, columns, ID, and so on. Let's change the label from post title to event name. Makes a bit more sense. Want a description? Drop a description in there. Want to apply classes so you can customize it? You can do that here as well. You can also set up the number of columns. So let's say we want this to be taking up 6. come into extra. You can set a default value, a placeholder, enable or disable it, and you can also apply validation to this. We'll leave those as they are for now. So now we've done that, let's go on to the next one. So now we can add the post content, post excerpt, and so on. Let's say we want to add in the event date first of all. Add that in. You can see that now puts it at the top. We could easily move these around, but let's choose this like you just seen. Let's set this to be 6 columns as well. And now you can see they stack side by side. Let's reorder these. That makes a bit more sense. And again, we can choose this. We can choose how we want to display this. The event date makes perfect sense here, but you can change that should it make more sense. Again, you've got extra for your validation and enable. All those options are here for you. Next up, let's close that down. Let's add in our post content. Let's reposition this where we want. Now, I would love to see this actually post these in the opposite way around. So this actually comes in underneath as opposed to the top. Now, you can still drag and drop these in if you want to. So, for example, you can say you want to pull in your post thumbnail. You can drop that where you want it. It's not always the easiest to get where you need. Post taxonomies. Again, we can add that in. Event details. Drop that in there, and this one inside there as well. So you can see we can set the event gallery, the post thumbnail, reorder these, position them where we want with a little bit of effort. So our post taxonomy settings, there's a few things we need to tweak inside here. You can see at the moment it shows lots of different options. Well, we don't want that to be the case. We want to jump into extra and disable the multiple field selection option, and that only allows them to choose one. Obviously, if you want to allow to be able to select multiple fields, you could do that here as well. So we'll leave that as it is. We don't want to allow empty values or disable it. We don't want any validation on there. Post thumbnail, settings. Again, configure things on there. The event gallery. You can see we can set things up there as well. Come into extra. The cool thing about this is you can choose what file formats are allowed to be uploaded. I'll leave that as it is for now, but you can configure this with JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, those kinds of things. Again, you can allow multiple, and again, you've got validation here. So we'll say we're happy with all of this. We'll hit save, and we now have our form created. So what we need to do is come back to our forms, copy this little shortcode, come over into our pages and add a new page. I'm going to call this add new event, hit publish, and we'll set this with bricks. We'll add a new section in, and inside there, we're going to grab the shortcode element, and inside there, let's expand this out, choose our shortcode, and just simply drop in the shortcode we've just been supplied. And you can see there's our form. Looks a bit ugly inside here, but it renders nicely on the front end. And now we've got that set up. Let's preview this. There's our form, and as you can see, we can add the event name in, the event date. Got a nice little calendar option here. Add the post content in, your thumbnail, event gallery, so you can upload multiple images from here. You get the idea. You can choose the taxonomy, and again, you can say only one can be selected, the event address, and so on. You can submit that, and then that will be added in for approval before it will be added to the site. But this is just the basics of what you can do using ACPT alongside Bricks Builder, or other tools if you want to. Like I said at the top of this video, this is a kind of beginner's kind of first view of how you can get started using it and integrating dynamic data from ACPT alongside WordPress dynamic data, create front-end forms, create templates to display your archive listings, to display your single post templates, and so on. All the kind of key things you should need to get up and running. But as I said at the beginning, if you want more information on anything specific, let me know in the comment section down below. If you want to check out more about working with ACPT, some of the functions and other things you can do, check out this playlist next. As always, my name's Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.